Welcome back to the Legal Alternative Podcast. I'm Sam Pawson, flying solo today, and Nils is down in London at court. So me today, just a quick update prior to Easter break. So we're going to have 2 weeks off the podcast for Easter. So I just wanted to make sure I had a little update on employment law before then to tide you all over for the Easter break. Quick update from me on a case being reported this month. I think useful guide on unfair gross misconduct dismissals. It's a case Billings and Nestlé, where an employee has been unfairly dismissed after being sacked for vaping in the toilet. This is a case where I'm going to talk about a subject we mentioned before, which is dismissals for gross misconduct under what we would call the band of reasonable responses. And where you have an incident, does that meet this threshold of gross misconduct? We've talked about in the past that when we're looking at a kind of band of reasonable responses case, it's not to say what a judge looks at is not what he or she would have decided on the day, but rather was the decision made by the company, the respondent in this case, within this theoretical band of reasonable responses. This is a case where the dismissal was obviously not within the band. So I think a useful case to kind of talk about when we're looking at threshold and do things meet that quite high threshold of gross misconduct. So just really briefly, facts. Cases say Billings and involving Nestlé. We'll be aware of the chocolate company. So we had a technical operator, Mr. Billings, who worked at one of the company's factories in Hatton in Derbyshire. There is an incident where the claimant has been alleged to have vaped in the toilet. That has then set off the smoke alarm in the toilet that has then caused a wide evacuation of the premises. Within the investigation, claimants denied actually vaping, but the company has held it is, in their view, reasonably that is likely to have occurred. So the issue here is not whether the company was wrong in that judgment. Dismissal was found to be unfair. The actual decision to dismiss and the finding of gross misconduct was, in the tribunal's view, disproportionate. What the tribunal has held, that this is a single isolated act. There's nothing in the claimant's history to suggest any other form of misconduct. And there were some suggestions that he had been treated differently in terms of consistency with similar isolated incidents that have occurred. Claimant's obviously not admitted to it, so there's no kind of mitigation. But there was found to be some flaws in terms of the policy and some, if the claimant was aware that vaping was not allowed in the toilets, I think the response evidence that would be self-evident, but they couldn't point to an actual policy prohibiting that. This decision to dismiss, as I say, by the company was held to be disproportionate, and then there was obviously finding of unfair dismissal. There has been some reduction to the compensation levels through the claimant's contributory fault. There was an acknowledgement that the individual probably knew they shouldn't be vaping, and that might obviously result in some form of action, but the decision to dismiss disproportionate. So I wanted to highlight that case really as an important lesson when we're looking at one-off isolated instance where there's clearly been some form of misconduct, but actually does it meet that high threshold of gross misconduct? What actually has the damage been caused? Yes, inconvenience. The whole factory's been evacuated. I'm sure there's some financial loss as a result of that. But really, is it that significantly serious? And the tribunals held that a lesser sanction would have been appropriate. So not even within that band of reasonable responses. So always good to be aware, frustrated as you are as a company, as an employer, with one-off stupid instance, they might not meet that gross misconduct threshold. So that's it for me this week. As I say, back with the podcast after Easter, back with Nils' usual updates. So it's goodbye for me and have a wonderful Easter.